The Galactic Academy's training grounds buzzed with activity as cadets from dozens of species practiced combat maneuvers. Zara Velthar, a young Cathurian with silver skin that shimmered like starlight, moved through her sword forms with deadly precision. Her four arms worked in perfect coordination, each wielding a different weapon as she demonstrated why her people were considered among the finest warriors in the galaxy. "Beautiful work, Velthar," called out instructor Korax, his reptilian features showing approval. "Your technique improves daily." Zara's chest swelled with pride. At 19 standard years, she was already being considered for advanced combat specializations. The Cathurians had ruled the warrior castes for over 3 millennia, and she intended to continue that legacy. A commotion near the Academy's main entrance caught her attention. Several cadets had gathered around someone, their voices carrying a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed mockery. "Is that really him?" whispered Jorak, a massive Threxian whose species was known for their incredible strength. "The last human," confirmed Nyx, her insectoid features clicking with amusement. "I heard they let him in as some kind of charity case." Zara's interest piqued. She'd heard stories about humans, the dead species that had once claimed to be warriors. Their homeworld, Earth, had been destroyed in the Great War 50 years ago. The few survivors were scattered across the galaxy, most working as merchants, scholars, or laborers. The idea that one had somehow gained admission to the Galactic Academy was laughable. She pushed through the crowd and got her first look at the human. He was disappointingly ordinary. Medium height, brown hair, unremarkable features. His name tag read Marcus Chen. He wore the standard Academy uniform, but it seemed to hang loosely on his frame as if he'd lost weight recently. "So you're the famous last human," Zara said loudly, causing the crowd to turn toward her. "I was expecting something more impressive." Marcus looked up at her with dark eyes that seemed older than his apparent age. "I'm not here to impress anyone," he said quietly. "I'm here to learn." His voice carried a strange accent, remnants of an Earth language that few in the galaxy still spoke. Zara found it grating on her ears. "Learn," she laughed, a sound like silver bells. "What could a human possibly learn here? Your species couldn't even defend their own planet." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Even among the competitive atmosphere of the Academy, bringing up the destruction of someone's homeworld was considered poor form. But Zara was too caught up in her performance to care. Marcus's expression didn't change. "You're right," he said simply. "We couldn't." His calm acceptance of the insult somehow made it worse. Zara had expected anger, defiance, something she could work with. Instead, his quiet dignity made her feel like the aggressor. "I heard humans used to think they were great warriors," continued Vrex, a Gornian cadet with gray, rock-like skin, "before reality caught up with them." "All species have their myths," Marcus replied, "yours included." The comment was mild, but something in his tone made Vrex's eyes narrow dangerously. The Gornians were proud of their military heritage, and any suggestion that their history might contain exaggerations was deeply insulting. "Care to back up that statement, human?" Vrex stepped closer, using his 2-meter height to loom over Marcus. "There's no need," Marcus said, not backing down despite the size difference. "We're all here for the same purpose." "Are we?" Zara circled around him, studying him like a predator examining prey. "Because I'm here to become a warrior worthy of my ancestors. You're here because—" "What?" Someone felt sorry for you. The crowd laughed, emboldened by her boldness. Marcus absorbed their mockery without flinching, which only seemed to fuel Zara's irritation. "Tell us, human," she continued. "What exactly do you bring to a warrior's academy? What skills do your people possess that we should respect?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Zara thought she'd finally gotten to him. When he spoke, his voice was so soft that the crowd had to strain to hear. "We endure." "Endure?" Zara's laughter was sharp. "That's not a warrior skill. That's what prey does while predators hunt them." "Sometimes," Marcus agreed, "and sometimes the prey survives long enough to become something else." There was something in his tone that made Zara pause, but she was committed to her performance now. The other cadets were watching, and her reputation was at stake. "Instructor Korax," she called out. "Perhaps our new human classmate would like to demonstrate these mysterious human skills in a training match." Korax looked uncomfortable. "Cadet Velthar, perhaps we should focus on scheduled exercises." I accept, Marcus said quietly. The crowd fell silent. Even Zara was surprised. She'd expected him to find some excuse to decline. Standard training weapons, Korax said reluctantly. First blood or submission, no permanent damage. The group moved to one of the practice circles. Zara selected her preferred weapon, a curved Cathurian blade that seemed to sing as it moved through the air. Marcus chose a simple straight sword, human in design, but clearly manufactured in the Academy's workshops. Last chance to back out, Zara offered as they faced each other across the circle. I don't want to hurt you too badly on your first day. Marcus tested the weight of his blade, making a few practice swings. His movements were competent but unremarkable. I appreciate the concern. Korax raised his hand. Combatants ready, begin. Zara moved with the fluid grace her people were famous for. She flowed toward Marcus like liquid starlight, her blade tracing deadly patterns in the air. It was beautiful, deadly, and should have ended the match in seconds. Instead, her blade met empty air. Marcus had moved aside with minimal effort, his own sword coming up to deflect her follow-up attack. The ring of metal on metal echoed across the training ground. Zara spun, bringing her blade around in a wide arc that would have taken his head off. Again, he wasn't there. He'd stepped back just far enough to avoid the strike, his own sword moving in a simple parry that turned her momentum against her. The crowd murmured in surprise. Zara was known for ending practice matches quickly and decisively. The fact that this human was still standing after 30 seconds was unexpected. Zara pressed her attack, using every technique she'd learned in 15 years of training. Her blade work was flawless, her timing perfect. But somehow, Marcus always seemed to be just out of reach. He didn't try to match her speed or power. Instead, he moved with an economy of motion that was almost boring to watch. Fight back, she snarled, frustrated by his purely defensive stance. I am fighting, he replied calmly, deflecting another strike. Just not the way you expect. His blade snaked out in a simple thrust that Zara easily avoided, but as she spun away, she realized he'd driven her toward the edge of the circle. She was being herded like livestock. The realization filled her with rage. She abandoned technique for pure aggression, raining down blow after blow with increasing desperation. Surely no human could maintain this defensive pattern forever. But he did, for 5 minutes, then 10. Zara's breathing became labored while Marcus seemed barely winded. Her perfect form began to deteriorate as fatigue set in. Yield, Marcus said softly during a brief pause in the combat. Never, Zara launched herself forward in a final, desperate attack. Marcus stepped aside, and his blade found the gap in her guard. The practice sword's blunted edge touched her throat with just enough pressure to make his point clear. Yield, he repeated. Zara stared into his dark eyes, seeing something there that made her blood run cold. This wasn't the gaze of someone who'd gotten lucky. This was the look of a predator who'd been playing with its food. I yield, she whispered. The crowd was silent as they separated. Zara couldn't meet their eyes, couldn't bear to see her humiliation reflected in their faces. Interesting technique, Korax said carefully. Very unconventional. Marcus nodded to the instructor, then to Zara. Thank you for the match, he said formally. I learned a lot. The casual dismissal stung worse than any insult. Zara watched him walk away, her mind reeling from what had just happened. She was a Cathurian warrior, descendant of champions, trained from childhood in the art of combat. How had a human, the last representative of a dead species, made her look like a novice? Lucky strike, muttered Vrex, but his voice lacked conviction. Zara said nothing. She'd felt the controlled power behind Marcus's movements, seen the calculation in his eyes. That hadn't been luck. As the crowd dispersed, Zara found herself alone with her thoughts and her wounded pride. She'd come to the academy to prove herself worthy of her heritage. Instead, she'd been humbled by someone she'd considered beneath notice. The worst part was that Marcus had never once tried to hurt her. He could have ended the match at any time, could have embarrassed her far worse than he did. His restraint was almost more insulting than a beating would have been. That night, Zara lay in her dormitory bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying the match over and over. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those dark, ancient eyes studying her like she was a puzzle to be solved. What kind of warrior fought like that? What kind of species produced such fighters? And if Marcus Chen was just a survivor, a refugee who'd somehow talked his way into the academy, what had the real human warriors been like? For the first time in her life, Zara began to question everything she'd been taught about the hierarchy of galactic species. Maybe, she thought as sleep finally claimed her, there was more to the story of humanity's fall than anyone wanted to admit. The next morning brought new revelations. Zara arrived at the training grounds early, hopping to work through her embarrassment before facing her classmates. She wasn't prepared to find Marcus already there, moving through what appeared to be a meditation routine. His movements were slow and deliberate, nothing like the dynamic combat forms favored by most species. Yet there was something hypnotic about the way he moved, as if he were dancing with invisible partners. "What is that?" she found herself asking. Marcus completed his sequence before turning to face her. "Tai Kai, an old Earth practice." "It looks," she struggled for the right word, "peaceful." "It is, and it isn't." Marcus began the form again, inviting her to watch. "My grandmother taught it to me when I was small. She said it was about finding balance between opposing forces." Zara watched in fascination as he demonstrated the principle. Each movement contained its opposite, softness and hardness, advance and retreat, tension and relaxation. "Is that how you fought yesterday?" she asked, "using my strength against me?" "Partly," Marcus paused mid-movement, "but mostly I just waited for you to defeat yourself." The words stung, but Zara forced herself to consider them objectively. Looking back at the match, she could see how her frustration had led to increasingly wild attacks, how her rage had destroyed her precision. "My people prize direct confrontation," she said slowly, "meeting strength with strength." "That has its place," Marcus agreed, "but sometimes the indirect path is more effective." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sunrise paint the training ground in shades of gold and crimson. "Why did you really come here?" Zara asked suddenly. "To the academy, I mean." Marcus was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for his apparent age. "Because I made a promise," he said, "to someone I failed to protect." There was such raw pain in those words that Zara felt ashamed of her earlier mockery. Whatever had brought Marcus to the academy, it wasn't charity or pity. "I'm sorry," she said, "about yesterday, about what I said." Marcus nodded acceptance. "You spoke what most people think, I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it right." "No," he agreed, "but understanding why people think something is the first step toward changing their minds." Other cadets were beginning to arrive, and Zara could see them pointing and whispering. News of yesterday's match had spread, along with various embellished versions of what had happened. "They're going to challenge you," she warned. "Everyone will want to test themselves against the human who beat a Cathurian." Marcus's smile was tired. "I know, and I'll face them all one at a time until they understand." "Understand what?" "That being the last of something doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it makes you everything your species ever was, concentrated into a single person." The words sent a chill down Zara's spine. She looked at this unremarkable human with new eyes, seeing not a refugee or charity case, but a living repository of an entire civilization's knowledge and experience. "What were humans really like?" she asked. "Before we lost everything," Marcus finished. "We were complicated, weak and strong, cruel and kind, brilliant and foolish, but we never gave up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do." Instructor Korax approached, his expression unreadable. "Chen, Velthar, you're both wanted in the Commandant's office." Zara's stomach dropped. Being called to see Commandant Drex, the Academy's grizzled Vorthan leader, was never good news. As they walked through the Academy's corridors, Zara found herself stealing glances at her companion. Marcus moved with the same quiet confidence he'd shown in combat, unbothered by the attention they were receiving from other students. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Always," he replied. "But my grandmother used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite the fear." They reached the Commandant's office, and Korax gestured for them to enter. Commandant Drex sat behind his desk, his scarred features giving nothing away. What surprised Zara was the presence of a second figure, a tall woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Cadets," Drex rumbled in his gravelly voice, Allow me to introduce Admiral Velthar of the Cathurian Defense Force. Zara's world tilted on its axis. Admiral Velthar was her mother, but more than that, she was one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy, a living legend who'd won victories against impossible odds. Mother, Zara's voice came out as a squeak. Admiral Velthar's silver eyes fixed on her daughter with an expression that was equal parts pride and disappointment. Zara, she said formally, I understand you've made quite an impression on your first day. Zara felt her cheeks burn with shame. News of her defeat had apparently reached all the way to Cathurian High Command. And you, the Admiral continued, turning to Marcus, must be the human everyone is talking about. Marcus stood at attention, his military bearing suddenly much more pronounced. Yes, ma'am. Admiral Velthar studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. Tell me, Cadet Chen, do you know why my daughter is here? To become a warrior worthy of her heritage, Marcus replied without hesitation. And do you believe she achieved that goal yesterday? Marcus glanced at Zara, then back at the Admiral. With respect, ma'am, I believe she learned something important about the difference between fighting and winning. The Admiral's lips curved in the slightest of smiles. Interesting perspective, and what did you learn? That the galaxy's assumptions about my species might not be entirely accurate. Commandant Drex leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. Explain. Marcus chose his words carefully. Everyone knows humans lost the Great War. What they don't know is how long we held out, or what it cost our enemies to defeat us. And you think that matters now? Admiral Velthar asked. I think, Marcus said slowly, that there are lessons to be learned from how we fought, even if we ultimately lost. The Admiral exchanged a glance with Drex that Zara couldn't interpret. There was something happening here, some undercurrent she didn't understand. Very well, the Admiral said finally. Cadet Chen, you'll be transferred to the Advanced Combat Program effective immediately. Cadet Velthar, you'll be his training partner. Zara's jaw dropped. The advanced program was reserved for the Academy's elite students, and she'd been hopping to qualify by the end of her second year. Mother, I don't understand. Understanding will come, Admiral Velthar said cryptically. For now, focus on learning everything you can from your new partner. I have a feeling you'll both need those skills sooner than you think. The Advanced Combat Program occupied an entirely different section of the Academy. Where the basic training areas were functional and sparse, the advanced facilities were equipped with holographic environments, gravity manipulation chambers, and weapon systems that could simulate virtually any combat scenario in the galaxy. Zara walked beside Marcus through corridors lined with portraits of legendary graduates. Her mother's image gazed down at them from a place of honor, commemorating her victory at the Battle of Kepler's Edge 15 years ago. She's watching us, Zara muttered, feeling the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. Good, Marcus replied. Accountability keeps us honest. They were met by Senior Instructor Thane, a grizzled Corvani veteran whose cybernetic eye had replaced the one lost in some long-ago battle. His remaining natural eye studied them both with calculating intensity. So you're the pair that's got command all stirred up, he growled. The Cathurian princess and the last human sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. Sir, Zara began, but Thane cut her off with a gesture. I've seen the footage of your little sparring match. Sloppy work, Velthar. You fought like you were trying to impress an audience instead of win a battle. Zara's cheeks burned, but she forced herself to remain silent. And you, Chen, Thane continued, showed interesting technique, but you're holding back. In real combat, hesitation kills. Yes, sir, Marcus replied evenly. Thane's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on them. You'll be training together for the next 6 months. By the end of that time, you'll either be ready for advanced deployment or you'll be back in basic training with the children. Are we clear? Crystal, sir, they responded in unison. Outstanding. Your first exercise starts now. Report to Simulation Bay 7. The Simulation Bay was a vast white chamber that could project any environment imaginable. As they entered, the walls dissolved into a rocky canyon under an alien sky. The gravity felt lighter than standard, and the air carried a sulfurous tang. Scenario, hostile territory reconnaissance, announced the computer's synthetic voice. Mission parameters downloading to your neural links. Information flowed into their minds through the Academy's standard training interface. They were reconnaissance scouts on Vega Prime, tasked with locating an enemy weapons cache. The terrain was treacherous, the enemy forces were numerous, and extraction was 12 hours away. Standard two-person patrol formation, Zara said, falling back on her training. I'll take point, you cover our 6. Marcus nodded, but something in his expression suggested disagreement. They moved out into the simulated landscape, their training weapons scanning for threats. The first ambush came within 10 minutes. Energy blasts erupted from concealed positions, forcing them to dive for cover behind a cluster of rocks. Zara immediately began planning a frontal assault, calculating angles and cover positions. Wait, Marcus said quietly, something's wrong. What do you mean? Zara kept her weapon trained on the enemy positions. Look at their placement. They've got us pinned, but they're not pressing the attack. It's like they want us to charge. Zara studied the tactical display in her visor. Marcus was right. The enemy positioning was odd. They had the firepower to overwhelm the scouts' position, but they were holding back. So what do we do? We think like humans, Marcus said with a slight smile. We find the option they didn't plan for. Instead of attacking or retreating, Marcus led them on a careful withdrawal that gradually looped around the canyon walls. It was slow, methodical work that required patience and precise timing. Zara found herself impressed by his ability to read the terrain and find routes that seemed impossible at first glance. 2 hours later, they were looking down at the enemy position from above. The simulated soldiers were still watching the rocks where they'd taken cover, apparently convinced their targets were still pinned down. Now we have options, Marcus said softly. We can call in their positions for artillery, mark them for extraction team cleanup, or neutralize them ourselves if necessary. That's not how my people would handle this, Zara admitted. How would they handle it? Direct assault, meet strength with strength, prove our courage in open battle. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That works when you have superior force or need to send a message, but what if you don't? What if you're outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting for survival? The question hung in the air as the simulation concluded. Their mission parameters had called for gathering intelligence, and they'd succeeded beyond expectations by identifying not just the weapons cache, but an entire enemy patrol network. Acceptable, Instructor Thane's voice crackled over the comm system. Chen, explain your tactical reasoning. Marcus activated his helmet recorder, displaying their route for analysis. The initial ambush was designed to force a predictable response, either direct assault or immediate retreat. Both options would have led us into prepared kill zones. And Velthar, your assessment? Zara hesitated, then spoke honestly. I would have failed this mission. My first instinct was to attack, which would have gotten us both killed. Correct, Thane replied bluntly. Your species' legendary bravery becomes legendary stupidity when applied incorrectly. Remember that. Over the following weeks, their training intensified. Each scenario was more complex than the last, designed to test not just their combat skills, but their ability to think beyond conventional solutions. They fought in zero gravity, where Zara's superior strength meant nothing, and Marcus's understanding of momentum and leverage gave him the advantage. They conducted infiltration missions, where her natural grace had to be combined with his patience and timing. They faced impossible odds that could only be overcome through perfect coordination and trust. Gradually, Zara began to understand what made human tactics so effective. It wasn't that they were inherently superior. It was that they were born from desperation. Humans had always been the underdog, forced to find ways to win against stronger, faster, better-equipped opponents. You think differently than we do, she told Marcus one evening as they reviewed combat footage from their latest exercise. How so? When you see a problem, you don't look for the solution everyone expects. You look for the solution no one planned for. Marcus considered this. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days on Earth. She said humans spent most of their history fighting each other, so we got very good at predicting what enemies would do. And then you do something else entirely. Exactly, the key to winning isn't being stronger than your enemy. It's being more unpredictable. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert echoing through the academy corridors. All training exercises were suspended, and cadets were ordered to report to their designated assembly areas. In the briefing hall, Commandant Drex stood before a holographic display showing stellar positions near the Outer Rim territories. His expression was grim, and the assembled instructors looked like they were preparing for war. "Attention, cadets," Drex announced. 3 hours ago, the mining colony on Kepler 7 went silent. Long-range sensors detected what appears to be a massive pirate fleet in the system. Galactic Defense Force units are en route, but they won't arrive for another 48 hours. Murmurs rippled through the assembled students. Kepler 7 was home to over 2 million civilians, mostly miners and their families. "The Academy's senior class will be deployed as part of the relief effort," Drex continued. "This is not a simulation. This is not a training exercise. Some of you may not return." Zara felt her blood turn to ice. The senior class included the Advanced Combat Program students. She looked around the hall, seeing her own fear reflected in the faces of her classmates. "Advanced Program students will deploy immediately aboard the cruiser Determination. You have 1 hour to gather your gear and prepare for departure. Dismissed." The hall erupted into controlled chaos as cadets rushed to prepare for their first real mission. Zara found herself walking in a daze, her mind struggling to process the transition from training exercises to actual combat. "Zara," Marcus's voice cut through her mental fog, "are you ready for this?" She looked at him, seeing calm determination in his dark eyes. "I don't know, are you?" "No," he said honestly, "but being ready and being prepared aren't the same thing. We've trained for this." "Training isn't the same as combat." "No, it isn't, but it's what we have." They reached their dormitory sections, and Zara realized she was about to face real battle alongside the human she'd once mocked as weak and useless. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Marcus," she called out as he headed toward his quarters. "Yes." "Thank you for the training, I mean. I understand now why my mother arranged this partnership." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, it reached his eyes. "Your mother is a very wise woman. You'll understand just how wise before this is over." An hour later, they stood in the launch bay of the cruiser Determination, surrounded by 24 of the Academy's best students. Most were older, 4th and 5th-year cadets who'd been preparing for graduation. Zara and Marcus were among the youngest, elevated to this level through their unique partnership. Admiral Velthar stood before them in full dress uniform, her silver hair gleaming under the bay's harsh lights. Beside her was a figure that made Zara's breath catch, General Corvan Drex, the Commandant's father and overall commander of Galactic Defense Forces. "Cadets," the Admiral began, "you're about to face your first real combat. The enemy you'll encounter isn't interested in fair fights or honorable combat. Pirates care only about profit and survival." General Drex stepped forward, his scarred features reflecting decades of military service. "Intelligence suggests we're facing the Crimson Fleet, led by Captain Vex Corvani. They've got superior numbers and firepower, but they're overconfident. That's our advantage." "Your mission," Admiral Velthar continued, "is to provide reconnaissance and harassment while the main fleet positions itself for assault. You'll be operating in small teams, using hit-and-run tactics to gather intelligence and disrupt their operations." Zara felt a chill of recognition. Hit-and-run tactics, unconventional approaches, fighting smarter instead of harder, everything Marcus had been teaching her was about to be put to the ultimate test. "Team assignments are being downloaded to your combat computers," General Drex announced. "Launch in 30 minutes. Remember, you're not just representing the Academy today. You're representing every world that depends on us for protection." As the briefing concluded, Zara checked her assignment. She and Marcus had been designated as Scout Team 7, tasked with reconnaissance of the pirates' outer perimeter. It was considered a relatively safe assignment, perfect for inexperienced cadets. "They're protecting us," Marcus observed, reading over her shoulder. "Does that bother you?" "No, but it might be a mistake. Sometimes the outer perimeter sees things the center misses." They boarded their assigned scout ship, a sleek vessel designed for stealth and speed rather than heavy combat. As they ran through pre-flight checks, Zara found herself thinking about her mother's words from their first meeting. "I have a feeling you'll both need those skills sooner than you think." Had Admiral Velthar known this was coming? Was their partnership part of some larger plan? Marcus, she said as they prepared for departure, do you think this is all connected? Our training, this mission, my mother's involvement. Marcus's hands moved efficiently over the control panels, his movements betraying the same calm competence he'd shown in every situation they'd faced together. I think, he said slowly, that we're about to find out just how much the galaxy has forgotten about human warfare, and your mother wants you to be there when it remembers. The ship's engines hummed to life, and they joined the formation of Academy vessels heading toward what might be their first and last battle. As they entered hyperspace, Zara wondered if she was ready to learn whatever lesson her mother had planned for her. Behind them, aboard the flagship Determination, Admiral Velthar stood at the observation deck watching the Academy ships disappear into the void. General Drex joined her, his expression troubled. Are you certain about this? He asked quietly. No, she replied, but some truths can only be learned in battle. If I'm right about him, we'll need every advantage we can get for what's coming. And if you're wrong? Admiral Velthar's silver eyes reflected the cold light of distant stars. Then we're all already doomed, and it won't matter what my daughter learns today. The Kepler-7 system was a graveyard of shattered metal and drifting debris. What had once been a thriving mining operation now floated in scattered pieces around the system's asteroid belt. The pirates had been thorough in their destruction. Zara stared at the sensor readings from their scout ship's concealed position behind a large asteroid. 200 vessels, she whispered. They brought their entire fleet. Marcus studied the tactical display with the same calm focus he applied to everything else. Look at their formation. They're not preparing to leave, they're settling in for a long-term occupation. That doesn't make sense. Pirates hit fast and run, they don't occupy territory. These aren't ordinary pirates, Marcus observed. Look at those ship classes, battle cruisers, heavy destroyers, carrier variants. This is a military fleet masquerading as brigands. The implication hit Zara like a physical blow. If Marcus was right, they weren't facing random criminals but a coordinated military operation using piracy as cover. The political ramifications were staggering. We need to get this information back to command, she said, reaching for the communications array. Wait, Marcus's hand stopped her. Something's wrong, check long-range sensors. Zara expanded their sensor sweep and felt her blood turn to ice. 3 more fleets were approaching the system from different vectors, each flying the colors of different pirate factions. The Crimson Fleet wasn't just occupying Kepler-7, they were hosting a gathering. It's a conference, she breathed. They're organizing. More than that, Marcus said grimly. Look at the timing. 4 separate pirate fleets arriving within hours of each other at a previously arranged location. This level of coordination requires advanced planning and significant resources. Before Zara could respond, proximity alarms began screaming. 3 ships had separated from the main fleet and were heading directly toward their position. They found us, Zara said, her hands flying over the control panels to prepare for emergency departure. No, Marcus said, studying the approaching vessel's flight patterns. They're running a standard patrol sweep, but they will find us if we stay here. Zara looked at their options. They could run, but their ship was designed for stealth, not speed. In open space, the pirate vessels would catch them easily. They could hide deeper in the asteroid field, but that would mean losing their observation post and the critical intelligence they'd gathered. What do humans do? She asked, surprised by her own words. Marcus smiled, and there was something almost predatory in the expression. We improvise. Instead of running or hiding, Marcus began moving their ship deeper into the asteroid field, but not to escape. He was positioning them to use the asteroids themselves as weapons. These rocks are loaded with heavy metals, he explained as he worked. If we can destabilize one of the larger ones. Zara understood immediately. Create a debris field that looks like a natural asteroid collision. Exactly. The patrol ships will investigate the disturbance, which gives us time to relocate and continue our surveillance. It was a brilliant plan, but it required precision timing and perfect execution. One mistake would bring the entire pirate fleet down on them. Marcus guided their ship to a large asteroid that showed signs of internal stress fractures. A carefully placed mining charge, standard equipment on all Academy vessels, would be enough to split it apart. "Remember," he said as they prepared the charge, "we're not trying to destroy their ships. We just want to create confusion and buy time." The charge detonated exactly on schedule, splitting the asteroid into dozens of smaller pieces that tumbled away in all directions. The approaching patrol ships immediately changed course to investigate what appeared to be a natural collision. While the pirates were distracted, Marcus moved their ship to a new position with clear sight lines to the main fleet. They were now close enough to intercept communications and analyze ship configurations in detail. What they found was even more disturbing than their initial observations. The pirate fleets weren't just coordinating, they were reorganizing into a single unified command structure. Ship after ship was being retrofitted with military-grade weapons and shielding. "This isn't piracy," Zara said, her voice hollow with realization. "This is preparation for war." But against who? Marcus wondered. The Galactic Defense Force, individual member worlds. Their answer came in the form of intercepted communications between fleet commanders. The pirates weren't targeting any single faction. They were preparing for a coordinated assault against the entire galactic government structure. "They're going to hit every major world simultaneously," Zara whispered as the scope of the plan became clear. "Military bases, government centers, trade hubs, everything that keeps the galaxy functioning." Marcus was already calculating response times and defensive capabilities. Most worlds only maintain token defense forces. They rely on GDF response fleets for serious threats. But if those fleets are tied up defending the core worlds, the outer territories will be defenseless, Zara finished. Billions of people with no protection. They needed to get this information to Admiral Velthar immediately. But as they prepared to transmit, their sensors detected movement. The main pirate fleet was beginning to disperse, with individual squadrons heading toward different exit vectors. "They're moving early," Marcus said. "Something spooked them." The answer came from their long-range communications array. GDF reinforcements were approaching the system, led by Admiral Velthar's flagship. But instead of the massive fleet the pirates had been expecting, it was only a small task force, 3 cruisers and a handful of escort vessels. "She doesn't know what she's flying into," Zara said. "Mother's expecting to face a normal pirate raid, not this." Marcus was studying the tactical situation with intense concentration. The pirates know they can't win a straight fight against even a small GDF force, so why aren't they running? His question was answered as hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid field suddenly came online. The pirates had been busy during their occupation, turning the entire system into a massive ambush. "It's a trap," Zara breathed. "They're using Kepler-7 as bait." Admiral Velthar's task force was walking into a carefully prepared killing field. The asteroid-mounted weapons could cripple their ships before they even realized the danger, leaving them helpless against the pirate fleet's superior numbers. "We have to warn them," Zara said, reaching for the communications console. "Wait," Marcus said. "If we break radio silence, we'll give away our position. The pirates will know their trap has been discovered." "So what do we do?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes reflecting calculations that Zara couldn't follow. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of terrible certainty. "We even the odds." Before Zara could ask what he meant, Marcus was already moving their ship toward the nearest weapons platform. Their scout vessel carried only light armament, nowhere near enough to destroy the massive installations the pirates had constructed. "Those platforms are heavily shielded," Zara protested. "Our weapons can't penetrate their defenses." "No," Marcus agreed, "but we don't need to destroy them. We just need to disable them at the right moment." He began downloading detailed schematics of the weapons platforms from their sensor arrays. Each installation was powered by fusion reactors that fed energy through heavily armored conduits to the primary weapon systems. "The power distribution network," Zara realized. "If we can disrupt it, the platforms will go offline for several minutes while their backup systems come online. That should be enough time for Admiral Velthar to recognize the trap and respond accordingly." It was a desperate plan that required them to get close enough to the weapons platforms to target their power systems. Their scout ship had stealth capabilities, but maintaining them while maneuvering through the asteroid field would be nearly impossible. "This is suicide," Zara said quietly. "Maybe," Marcus replied, "but it's better than watching your mother die in an ambush." They began their approach, using every trick Marcus had taught her about unconventional tactics and misdirection. Their ship ghosted between asteroids like a shadow, taking advantage of sensor-blind spots and electromagnetic interference from the mining operation's residual machinery. The first weapons platform loomed ahead of them, its massive bulk bristling with particle cannons and missile launchers. Marcus brought them in at an impossible angle, using the platform's own bulk to hide them from its sensors. "Targeting the primary power coupling," he reported. 3 seconds of sustained fire should do it." Their ship's weapons were designed for anti-personnel work, not heavy combat. But focused on a single vulnerable point, they were sufficient to overload the platform's power distribution system. The weapons platform went dark just as Admiral Velthar's fleet emerged from hyperspace. "One down," Marcus said grimly. 11 to go." They moved to the next platform, then the next, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse with patrol ships that were beginning to realize something was wrong. Each successful attack increased the risk of detection, but also brought them closer to saving the GDF task force. On the 7th platform, their luck ran out. A patrol ship spotted their energy discharge and immediately called for reinforcements. Within minutes, a dozen pirate vessels were converging on their position. "Run or fight?" Zara asked as enemy ships began appearing on their sensors. Marcus's answer came in the form of action rather than words. He dove their scout ship into the densest part of the asteroid field, using every piece of cover available while continuing to target the remaining weapons platforms. What followed was the most terrifying hour of Zara's life. Their small ship darted between massive asteroids while pirate vessels tried to pin them down with overwhelming firepower. Marcus flew like no pilot she'd ever seen, treating their ship as an extension of his own body and anticipating enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. They destroyed 3 more platforms before Admiral Velthar's force finally understood what was happening. The GDF task force immediately began engaging the pirate fleet, their superior training and equipment evening the odds despite being outnumbered. But the battle was far from over. Even with several weapons platforms offline, the pirates still had significant advantages in numbers and prepared positions. "We've done all we can," Zara said as they watched the engagement unfold. "We should withdraw and let the fleet handle this." Marcus was studying the battle display with intense focus. "Your mother's in trouble. See how the pirates are concentrating fire on the flagship. They're trying to decapitate the command structure." He was right. Admiral Velthar's ship was taking heavy fire from multiple directions, its shields beginning to fail under the sustained assault. "There's nothing we can do about it," Zara said desperately. "We're in a scout ship, not a battle cruiser." "No," Marcus said slowly, "but we might not need to be." He was looking at something on the tactical display that Zara couldn't identify. "What are you thinking?" "The pirates' command ship," Marcus said, highlighting a massive vessel at the center of the enemy formation. "It's coordinating all their attacks, maintaining their battle line integrity. Without it, their formation would collapse," Zara finished. "But that ship is surrounded by escorts and defensive platforms. We never get close enough to do any damage." Marcus smiled, and Zara was beginning to recognize that expression. It meant he'd found the option nobody else had considered. "We don't need to get close," he said. "We just need to get their attention." Before Zara could ask what he meant, Marcus was already implementing his plan. Their scout ship began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending out a signal that would be impossible for the pirates to ignore. It was a human distress call, transmitted in ancient Earth languages that hadn't been heard in 50 years. The effect on the pirate fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships began breaking formation, converging on their position from all directions. The carefully maintained battle line collapsed as individual captains abandoned their assigned positions to investigate this impossible transmission. "They're coming for us," Zara said, watching dozens of enemy vessels turn in their direction. "Good," Marcus replied. "That means they're not shooting at your mother." The tactical situation had completely reversed. Admiral Velthar's fleet found themselves facing a confused, disorganized enemy force that was more interested in chasing a single scout ship than maintaining their defensive positions. "Now we run," Marcus said, engaging their ship's maximum thrust. What followed was a chase that would be remembered in Academy textbooks for decades. A single human pilot, flying a lightly armed scout ship, led an entire pirate fleet on a merry chase through the Kepler-7 asteroid field, while a Cathurian admiral systematically dismantled their abandoned defensive positions. By the time the pirates realized their mistake, it was too late. Half their fleet had been destroyed or disabled, and the rest were scattered throughout the system in hopeless pursuit of a ship they couldn't catch. The human distress call had triggered something primal in their pursuit instincts, the possibility that somewhere in this system was a clue to humanity's lost military secrets. They'd abandoned all tactical sense in favor of that tantalizing possibility. When it was over, Captain Vex Corvani's Crimson Fleet had been completely destroyed, and the coordinated pirate alliance lay in ruins. The attack on galactic civilization had been stopped before it could begin. Admiral Velthar's voice crackled over their communication system as they finally returned to the fleet formation. "Scout Team 7, report to the flagship immediately. The Admiral wants to see you both." As they docked with the massive cruiser, Zara found herself wondering what her mother would say about their improvised tactics and blatant disregard for military protocol. "Do you think we're in trouble?" she asked Marcus as they walked through the flagship's corridors. "Probably," he replied, "but trouble can be educational." They were escorted to Admiral Velthar's command cabin, where they found her standing before a holographic display showing the battle's aftermath. She turned as they entered, her silver eyes unreadable. "Cadet Velthar, Cadet Chen." Her voice was formal, giving no hint of her thoughts. "That was quite a performance." "Ma'am," they replied in unison. 12 weapons platforms disabled, an entire enemy fleet lured out of position, a coordinated attack on galactic civilization prevented. She paused, studying them both. "Tell me, Cadet Chen, where did you learn those tactics?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "From my grandmother, ma'am. She told me stories about how humans fought during the Great War." "And what did those stories teach you?" "That sometimes the best way to win a battle is to make your enemy forget why they're fighting." Admiral Velthar's expression softened slightly. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. I'd very much like to meet her." "I'm afraid that's impossible, ma'am. She died when Earth fell." "I see." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Tell me, what was her name?" "Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force." The effect of those words on Admiral Velthar was immediate and dramatic. Her face went pale, and she sank into a chair as if her legs could no longer support her. "Sarah Chen," she whispered, "the ghost of Procyon." Zara stared at her mother in confusion. She'd never seen the Admiral look so shaken. "Mother, what's wrong?" Admiral Velthar looked up at Marcus with an expression that mixed awe, grief, and something that might have been fear. "Your grandmother," she said slowly, "was the most dangerous human who ever lived." The silence in Admiral Velthar's cabin stretched like a taut wire. Zara looked between her mother and Marcus, trying to understand the weight of what had just been revealed. Marcus stood perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the Admiral with an intensity she'd never seen before. "The ghost of Procyon," Admiral Velthar repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have realized the tactics, the unconventional thinking, the way you move in combat. You're her legacy." "Mother," Zara said carefully, "who was the ghost of Procyon?" Admiral Velthar stood slowly, moving to her personal terminal. With shaking fingers, she accessed files buried deep in classified archives. A holographic image materialized, a human woman with graying hair and the same dark eyes as Marcus. "Commander Sarah Chen," the Admiral said formally. "The human who prolonged the Great War by 15 years and cost the Alliance over 2 million casualties." Zara felt the blood drain from her face. The Great War had been the most devastating conflict in galactic history, a desperate struggle between the established powers and an aggressive alliance of militant species. Earth had been caught in the middle, ultimately destroyed when they chose the wrong side. 2 million, Zara whispered. "Conservative estimate," Admiral Velthar confirmed. She was responsible for the disaster at Vega Station, the collapse of the Meridian Offensive, and the massacre of the Fifth Fleet at Rigel Prime. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice steady despite the revelations about his grandmother's legacy. She defended her people the only way she knew how. Defended? Admiral Velthar's laugh was bitter. She turned guerrilla warfare into an art form. Entire fleets would vanish without a trace, their crews found weeks later floating in space with no idea how they'd gotten there. Supply lines would be severed by enemies who appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. The Admiral began packing, her composure cracking as memories surfaced. I was a young commander then, serving under Admiral Drex's predecessor. We were tasked with hunting down human resistance cells. For 3 years, we chased shadows while she made us look like amateurs. But humans lost the war, Zara said, confused. If she was so effective. She was one person, Marcus said quietly. One human against an entire galaxy. Eventually, even the ghost of Procyon couldn't be everywhere at once. Admiral Velthar nodded grimly. We finally cornered her fleet at Earth itself. The planet was already doomed. Orbital bombardment had begun days earlier. But she stayed to coordinate the evacuation of refugee ships. She paused, her silver eyes distant with memory. I was there when her ship was destroyed. The Terran flagship Heritage, broken and burning but still fighting. We thought that was the end of human resistance. It was, Marcus said. Grandmother's ship was the last organized human military unit. After that, we became refugees and survivors. But the knowledge survived, Admiral Velthar said, studying him intently. The tactics, the strategies, the unconventional thinking that made her so dangerous, she passed it all to you. Marcus nodded slowly. She told me stories, said they were just tales about the old days. I didn't realize until today how literal they were. Zara was struggling to process everything she'd learned. Marcus, quiet, unassuming Marcus, was the inheritor of the most feared military mind in recent galactic history. The human who'd consistently outwitted forces 10 times his size was carrying on a tradition that had once brought the galaxy's greatest powers to their knees. That's why you arranged our partnership, she said to her mother. You knew who he was. Suspected, Admiral Velthar corrected. When I heard a human had been admitted to the academy, I had his background investigated. The name Chen, the birth records showing he was raised by his grandmother, certain psychological profiles that matched historical patterns. It all pointed to a connection. So you put me with him as what? A test? As preparation, her mother said firmly. Because the galaxy is about to remember why humans were considered such dangerous enemies. She activated her command console, displaying intelligence reports from across the Outer Rim territories. The pirate alliance we just destroyed wasn't an isolated incident. Similar organizations are forming in a dozen different sectors. Someone is coordinating a galaxy-wide destabilization effort. The same someone who equipped pirates with military-grade hardware, Marcus observed. Exactly, and whoever they are, they've been studying human tactics. The ambush at Kepler 7, the coordinated multi-vector assault, the use of civilian targets as bait, those are all strategies pioneered during the Great War. Zara felt a chill of understanding. Someone's using grandmother's methods against us. Which means, Admiral Velthar said gravely, that we need someone who understands those methods better than anyone else, someone who learned them at the source. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. You want me to help predict their next moves. I want you to help us prepare for a new kind of war, the Admiral corrected. One where conventional military thinking won't be enough. She moved to another display showing troop movements and fleet dispositions across the galaxy. The GDF is designed to fight traditional enemies, organized fleets, established bases, predictable strategies. But if our enemy is using human-style warfare, guerrilla tactics, asymmetric engagements, psychological warfare, Marcus completed. Everything the established military academies don't teach. Precisely, which is why I'm recommending you for immediate commissioning as a tactical advisor. Lieutenant Chen, if you accept. The promotion was unprecedented, from cadet to commissioned officer in a single day. But Zara could see the logic behind it. If the galaxy was about to face an enemy that fought like humans, they needed someone who thought like humans to counter them. What about me? Zara asked. What's my role in this? Admiral Velthar smiled at her daughter for the first time since the revelation began. You're going to learn everything Lieutenant Chen can teach you about unconventional warfare. Then you're going to help train the next generation of officers to think beyond traditional tactics. A complete revision of military doctrine, Zara realized, based on human methods. Based on your grandmother's methods, the Admiral corrected, looking at Marcus. The question is whether you're willing to share them with former enemies. Marcus considered this carefully. The humans had fought against the galactic powers during the Great War, ultimately losing everything in the process. Now he was being asked to help those same powers prepare for a new conflict. Grandmother once told me, he said slowly, that the greatest victory is preventing the battle from being necessary. If these tactics can protect innocent people regardless of their species, she would have wanted them shared. Even with the people who destroyed Earth. Especially with them, Marcus replied, because now we have a chance to make sure it never happens again. Admiral Velthar nodded approvingly. Very well. Lieutenant Chen, your first assignment is to analyze these intelligence reports and provide an assessment of enemy capabilities and likely strategies. Cadet Velthar, you'll assist him and begin documenting whatever you learn. She paused, her expression becoming grave. Understand, both of you, what we're discussing cannot leave this room. If word spreads that we're reviving human military doctrine, it could cause panic among the civilian populations. Many species still have traumatic memories of the Great War. Understood, they replied simultaneously. As they prepared to leave, Admiral Velthar called out to her daughter. Zara, I'm proud of what you accomplished today. Your willingness to learn from Marcus, to adapt your thinking, that's exactly what we'll need in the coming conflict. Thank you, Mother, but I have a question. Yes. If humans were such dangerous enemies, why did the Alliance ultimately win the war? Admiral Velthar exchanged a long look with Marcus before answering. Because humans made one critical mistake. They tried to fight honorably against enemies who had no such limitations. And this time, the Admiral said grimly, honor may be a luxury we can't afford. Over the next several weeks, Marcus and Zara worked together to analyze the growing threat. Intelligence reports poured in from across the galaxy, painting a picture of coordinated chaos that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Pirates weren't just organizing. They were implementing sophisticated strategies that maximize psychological impact while minimizing their own losses. Trading convoys would be attacked not for their cargo, but to strand crews in empty space where their distress calls would terrify other merchants. Military patrols would be engaged briefly, then allowed to escape so they could spread word of mysterious new enemies who fought unlike anything in their training manuals. It's brilliant, Marcus admitted as they reviewed the latest reports. They're not trying to win battles, they're trying to erode confidence in the established order. Create a sense that the galaxy's protectors are helpless against this new threat, Zara agreed. But it requires incredible coordination. Someone's directing this entire campaign. Marcus pulled up a star chart showing the locations of every reported incident. Look at the pattern. The attacks aren't random, they're designed to create specific psychological effects in different regions. Zara studied the display, seeing the subtle logic behind what had appeared to be chaos. Fear in the core worlds, desperation in the outer rim territories, uncertainty in the trade zones. Whoever's behind this understands galactic politics as well as military strategy. Your grandmother's level of strategic thinking, Marcus nodded grimly. At least, possibly better. She was fighting to save her people. This enemy is fighting to destroy an entire civilization. Their analysis was interrupted by an emergency communication from GDF Command. A massive fleet had appeared at the edge of the Centauri system, broadcasting a message that sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The message was simple, delivered in perfect galactic standard by a figure whose face was concealed behind an ornate mask. Citizens of the galaxy, we are the heirs of Earth. We have returned to reclaim what was taken from us 50 years ago. Surrender peacefully and you will be spared. Resist and face the fate that befell your predecessors. As the transmission ended, Zara felt the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Heirs of Earth, humans who survived the war and spent 50 years planning their revenge. But that's impossible, Marcus said, though his voice carried doubt. There weren't enough survivors to field a fleet this size, and they'd need incredible resources, advanced technology, political connections. His words trailed off as the implications became clear. Someone had been preparing for this moment since Earth's destruction, gathering resources and allies while the galaxy believed humanity was extinct. Lieutenant Chen, Cadet Velthar, report to command immediately. Admiral Velthar's voice crackled over the communication system. We have a war to fight. As they rushed through the corridors of the academy toward the command center, Zara found herself wondering if Marcus truly was the last human warrior, or if they were about to discover that humanity's greatest battles were still ahead of them. The ghost of Sarah Chen, it seemed, had taught her lessons to more than just her grandson. The command center of the Galactic Defense Force was a chaos of activity when Marcus and Zara arrived. Officers from dozens of species worked frantically at holographic displays showing fleet movements, defensive positions, and casualty reports streaming in from across the galaxy. At the center of it all stood Admiral Velthar, her silver hair catching the light of 100 tactical displays as she coordinated the galaxy's response to this unprecedented threat. General Drex stood beside her, his scarred features grim as he processed intelligence reports. The heirs of Earth have simultaneously struck 17 systems, the general reported as they approached. Military installations, government centers, major trade hubs, all targeted with surgical precision. Casualties, Admiral Velthar asked. Surprisingly low. They seem more interested in capturing infrastructure intact than causing maximum damage, almost like they're planning to occupy these systems permanently. Marcus studied the tactical displays, noting the sophisticated coordination required for such a complex operation. This isn't revenge, he said quietly. It's conquest. Explain, Admiral Velthar ordered. Look at the targets. Marcus indicated specific systems on the star chart. They're not hitting population centers or symbols of power. They're taking control of hyperspace junction points, manufacturing facilities, research stations, everything needed to support a long-term military campaign. Zara followed his reasoning. They're not trying to destroy galactic civilization, they're trying to replace it. With what? General Drex demanded. Before anyone could answer, a new communication signal appeared on the main display. The masked figure from earlier stood on what appeared to be the bridge of a massive warship, flanked by humans in military uniforms that bore no resemblance to any known galactic military force. Citizens of the galaxy, the figure began, I am Admiral Helena Kane, leader of the Human Liberation Fleet. 50 years ago, you destroyed our world and scattered our people across the stars. Today, we begin the process of reclaiming our rightful place in galactic civilization. The camera panned across the bridge, showing humans operating advanced technology that seemed decades ahead of anything in the current galactic arsenal. Their efficiency and coordination spoke of long years of preparation and training. We do not come as conquerors, Admiral Kane continued. We come as liberators. For too long, the galaxy has been dominated by ancient powers who suppress innovation and maintain order through fear. We offer a new way forward, one based on merit rather than birthright, achievement rather than species privilege. The transmission shifted to show the systems they'd captured. Instead of the destruction everyone expected, there were scenes of humans working alongside alien civilians, repairing damaged infrastructure and establishing new governmental structures. Those who join us willingly will be welcomed as equals, Kane announced. Those who resist will be reminded why humanity once fought the entire galaxy to a standstill. You have 72 hours to consider your choice. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Propaganda, General Drex said finally. They're trying to divide our alliances by appealing to dissatisfied populations. Is it working? Admiral Velthar asked one of her intelligence officers. Early reports suggest significant support in the Outer Rim territories, the officer replied reluctantly. Many colonies feel abandoned by the core government. The promise of representation based on merit rather than species origin is appealing to them. Marcus was studying the tactical implications with growing concern. This Admiral Kane isn't just militarily sophisticated. She understands galactic politics better than most sitting senators. Where could humans have learned this level of strategic thinking? From the best teacher possible, Admiral Velthar said grimly. Experience, 50 years of living as refugees, watching how the galaxy really works from the outside. A new alarm sounded as additional intelligence reports arrived. The human liberation fleet wasn't just occupying captured systems, they were expanding them. Advanced manufacturing facilities were being constructed at unprecedented speed, while human scientists worked alongside alien experts who seemed eager to share their knowledge. They're building an empire, Zara realized, not through conquest but through offering something better than what currently exists, which makes them infinitely more dangerous than simple pirates or terrorists, Marcus agreed. You can fight an enemy who wants to destroy you. It's much harder to fight one who wants to improve you. Admiral Velthar gathered her senior staff for an emergency strategy session. The holographic conference table filled with the images of fleet commanders and political leaders from across the galaxy, their expressions ranging from anger to panic to barely concealed interest in the humans' offer. The situation is unprecedented, Admiral Velthar began. We're facing an enemy that combines advanced military capabilities with sophisticated political strategy. Traditional military responses may not be sufficient. You're suggesting negotiation, demanded Admiral Corax, the Threxian fleet commander, with the people who destroyed half our outer defensive grid in a single day. I'm suggesting we understand what we're really facing, Admiral Velthar replied calmly. Lieutenant Chen, what's your assessment of their military capabilities? Marcus activated a tactical analysis he'd been working on since the attacks began. Based on observed performance, the human liberation fleet possesses technology roughly 50 years ahead of current galactic standards. Their ships are faster, more heavily armed, and demonstrate coordination patterns that suggest advanced artificial intelligence support. Impossible, protested Admiral Vex of the Cathurian Defense Force. Humans were never technologically superior. They compensated for inferior equipment through unconventional tactics. 50 years ago, Marcus corrected. But consider this, while the galaxy maintained its existing technology base through established manufacturers and traditional research methods, scattered human refugees had to innovate constantly just to survive. They've had 5 decades to develop solutions to problems the rest of us didn't even know existed. The implications were staggering. While galactic civilization had remained largely static, confident in its technological superiority, humanity had been forced to evolve or die. What about their numbers? Asked General Drex. How large is this liberation fleet? Unknown, Marcus admitted. But based on their operational capabilities, I estimate at least 10,000 vessels of various classes, far more than the known human population should be able to support. Unless they've been recruiting, Zara said suddenly. Look at their propaganda broadcasts. They're not appealing just to humans, they're offering membership to anyone who feels marginalized by current galactic power structures. She brought up demographic analyses showing species and populations that had good reasons to be dissatisfied with their current circumstances. Outer rim colonies with limited representation, species locked out of advancement opportunities by ancient prejudices, entire worlds whose resources were extracted by core systems with little benefit to local populations. They're building a coalition, Admiral Velthar realized, using human military expertise as the foundation for a political revolution. Before anyone could respond, priority alerts began flashing across every console. The human liberation fleet had just appeared at the edge of the Sol system, the location where Earth had once existed. They're going home, Marcus said quietly, or trying to. The tactical display showed a massive fleet formation surrounding the dead star that had once warmed Earth. At the center of the formation was a ship unlike anything in current galactic records, clearly human in design, but incorporating technologies that seemed almost alien. That's not a warship, Admiral Velthar observed. It's some kind of construction vessel. Long-range sensors confirmed her assessment. The mysterious ship was deploying thousands of smaller craft that began working with incredible efficiency to construct something in the space where Earth had once orbited. They're building a memorial, Zara whispered, understanding what they were witnessing. More than that, Marcus corrected, his voice filled with wonder. They're building a new world. The construction process was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of traditional planetary engineering techniques that took centuries, the human fleet was employing some form of advanced nanotechnology that seemed to create matter from pure energy. Within hours, a skeletal framework began to take shape, not a space station or orbital platform, but the basic structure of an entire planet. The process accelerated as more ships arrived, each contributing specialized equipment and materials to the massive construction project. "This changes everything," Admiral Velthar said, her strategic mind grasping the implications immediately. "If they can create worlds from nothing, they can offer true independence to any group willing to join them," Marcus finished. "Not just political autonomy, but actual physical separation from existing power structures. The galaxy's refugee populations, marginalized species, and disenfranchised colonies would no longer need to fight for better treatment within existing systems. They could simply leave and build something new under human protection." "We need to make contact," Admiral Velthar decided, "not to negotiate surrender, but to understand what they really want." "And if they want the destruction of galactic civilization as we know it?" General Drex asked. "Then we learn why," she replied. "Lieutenant Chen, you're humanity's representative in this conflict, whether you like it or not. I want you to open a dialogue with Admiral Kane." Marcus nodded, though Zara could see the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What should I tell her?" "The truth," Admiral Velthar said simply. "That not everyone who fought in the Great War believed humanity deserved destruction, and that some of us have spent 50 years regretting what we allowed to happen." The communication link to the Human Liberation Fleet was established within hours. When Admiral Kane's image appeared on the main display, Marcus found himself looking into eyes that could have been his grandmother's, dark, intelligent, and carrying the weight of terrible loss. "Lieutenant Marcus Chen," she said, his name carrying neither surprise nor recognition. "Grandson of Sarah Chen, the ghost of Procyon. You know who I am. We know exactly who you are. The question is whether you know who you are." Kane's words hung in the air like a challenge. Behind her, Marcus could see other human faces, survivors, refugees, descendants of those who had lost everything when Earth fell. "I know I'm probably the last human serving in the Galactic Defense Force," Marcus said carefully. "You are," Kane confirmed. "The question is whether you're serving the people who destroyed your home or building something better from its ashes." "What are you offering?" Kane's smile was cold. "Justice, equality, a galaxy where merit matters more than species origin, where ancient prejudices don't determine a civilization's fate. And if the current galactic government refuses, then they'll discover that humans haven't forgotten how to fight, but this time we won't be alone." The transmission shifted to show the new world taking shape in Earth's former orbit. Already, the skeletal framework was being filled in with what appeared to be living matter, not metal or artificial materials, but something that pulsed with organic vitality. "This is New Terra," Kane announced. "The first of many worlds we'll create for those brave enough to join us. Humans, aliens, anyone willing to help build a better future. At the cost of billions of lives if war breaks out," Marcus pointed out. "War is a choice," Kane replied. "The same choice you're